All right, here we go for week 3 in college football. And actually, this is the premiere of OFN Saturdays. Actually, OFN College Football Saturdays on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. We have been striving to put this program together. Actually, should have even been on a couple of hours ago, but better late than never. There's still some huge games coming up tonight in college football. We're going to get to that and much more right here on OFN on PSN right now. All right, it is Saturday, the 23rd of September, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, for this OFN College Football Saturday show. And, boy, this is going to be a fast one, and there usually are, because I fly solo on this one, and I usually don't fly solo on these shows. So whenever I do, I try to get as much information in as little as time as possible. I know it's a busy day. Normally, we're going to have these shows available either on Fridays or early before noon on Saturdays. But I figured it was better to just get this thing underway, even if we were a little late. A little late is better than not at all. So let's get right to it. And we want to just remind everybody that if you've been following our picks for college football over at primesportsnetwork.com, that's where we post them. But of course, we also have our futures report every week, which we will have. I'm going to be posting that report a little bit later on today. We'll post our NFL futures report tomorrow morning before the games begin. And again, the schedule will be a little bit different next week. We'll have some of these things available to you a little bit earlier on. We're going to get into the futures in a little bit. But let's start, first of all, with our picks and analysis on some of these games happening today. So far, we haven't really watched anything today as far as the 12 o'clock games. We've already put in a couple of picks. We tweeted them out, and always keep an eye on our Twitter handle at PrimeSN, because that's where we're always going to, if we don't have the time to put the information out there, or there are last-minute scheduling changes, like when we scheduled the show at 2, we moved it to 3. We'll always tweet it out to let you know when we're going to be on the air. So anyway, we already have a couple of picks in for our money line straight-up plays, and we've got a few more to go. Let's go through these games first, because that's really the most important thing, not my picks, but the information that hopefully I can provide you that I know how everybody is in both pro and college football and all sports all over the country and all over the world. Fact is, if you can get the information, no matter where you get it, the more information, the better, and hopefully we can give you the best information so you can enjoy your day. So let's go ahead and get right to it. First of all, as far as yesterday, South Florida crushed Temple. We've talked about, even though we kind of put both South Florida and Temple in our teams that we really don't feel will live up to the type of teams that people had expected this season. Now, for Temple, maybe not a surprise with Matt Rule gone. A lot of the talent's gone. Hassan Reddick's gone. Philip Walker's gone. And a bunch of other players are gone. And because of that, Temple just looks like the old Temple. They just do. Sorry, but that's what's going on. Jeff Collins is not in a good situation there. They have no offense. For South Florida, their schedule is so weak that they should go 8-0. But then at the end of the season, they play Houston, Tulsa, Central Florida. They might lose 2 out of those 3, but if they can win all 3 of them, and I'm not saying I'm ruling that out completely, especially if they can get better and more used to this new coaching staff as the season goes on, then maybe South Florida can do something, but I don't see it yet. I need to see more of it. I just don't think that the offense is playing the way they were playing last year. Look, you lose Marlon Mack, that's a huge loss. They lost a couple of key guys on offense, including Mack, and I think it shows. But at this point in time, they are the class. At least they're the class of that division right now. Temple, not going to have to worry about them, but the team that South Florida really has to worry about in their division is definitely going to be Central Florida. They are already just about getting underway against Maryland right now, and that, of course, as we've talked about before, those are 2 teams that we really do believe in. 2 teams that, in other words, don't think that Maryland win over Texas was a fluke. Not that I believe that Maryland's going to be this big-time Big Ten competitor this year, but they're going to have a very good season, better season than people thought. Kasim Hill, even though they lose Pigram, their quarterback, Kasim Hill is a very talented true freshman. They also have Ty Johnson and DJ Moore, skill position players. Mackenzie Milton is the quarterback at Central Florida. Scott Frost running the show there. We really like what Central Florida is doing. I believe, especially because they host South Florida later on, the last game of the season in Orlando, that Central Florida will end up winning that division and playing in the Conference USA Championship. Excuse me, the AAC Conference Championship game, or the AA Conference Championship game. But that's later on. But this is not a conference game. Very good game though that I'm going to keep an eye on, and we'll talk more about that next week. By the way, Milton had 4 turnovers in their matchup with Maryland last year. The game went to double overtime. Maryland beat them by 6. Okay, getting back to what happened last night, Virginia, Bronco Mendenhall defeated Boise State. Big upset, 42-23. We've also mentioned that we do not like Boise. Very similar situation to South Florida. I could see people in both of those situations going, well, I don't understand. What is it about Boise that you don't like? I mean, what exactly is the problem here? Because going into the game yesterday, they were 3-0. Well, actually 2-1 with an overtime loss at Washington State, which is going to happen. But this is, look, anytime that you throw over your quarterback situation to a former Kansas quarterback, you got some issues. And they do. Rippon has, for some reason, taken a step backwards. We'll be talking about a Boise offensive coordinator, Eli Drinkwitz, in just a bit. Actually, we won't talk about it, but I'll reference that because I might as well do it now. Because Drinkwitz was the coordinator at Boise a couple of years ago when he had Ryan Finley there. Finley transfers to North Carolina State, which is the reason why I like North Carolina State today against Florida State. And that's why we tweeted that one out before. Because freshman quarterback, first start for Florida State, Blackman against Finley. Anyway, Finley and Drinkwitz have really worked well together. And Boise State's lost something. The thing is, it didn't necessarily just happen last year. Finley was okay. Rippon was okay last year. But something has happened this year to this Boise State offense. And, yeah, they've lost some players, no question about it. They lost Jeremy McNichols, who's a very big part of that offense, and a couple other pretty important contributors. So that offense pretty much has Chedrick Wilson, and that's it. And that is just a big, big issue right now for Boise State. And they've also had some transitioning along the offensive line. Bottom line is Brian Harsin, I don't think he's going to be there very longer. This might be the beginning of the end. This is what happens sometimes when you get these coaches take over for these really good coaches like Peterson. Maybe they can hang around for a couple of years because they get the recruits from the old coach. But right now, it's been 4 years. This is the 5th year for Harsin. Actually, it's the 4th year for Harsin. And anyway, fact is, it's not starting to work out at this point in time. And the interesting thing is the coach has won what? 31 games in 3 years? That's pretty good. But it's evident. The talent's not there. It's evident by just taking a look at the way they played over the last few years. They went to the Mountain West Championship game in his first year after Peterson left. That was their best year. Big surprise. Again, all of Peterson's guys. But the last 2 years, he hasn't even been able to coach this team into the Mountain West Conference Championship game. That's a problem. And that's why Boise State, I think this is the beginning of the end. It signals it. But for Bronco Mendenhall, huge win for Virginia. Not a surprise if you know how good of a coach Mendenhall is, that he's got this Virginia program back where it belongs. They're now 3-1. They'll play Duke after a week off this week at home, I believe. Bankert had probably the best game of his career against Boise last night with 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to senior receiver Andre Levrone, who had a big day. And so a huge win for Virginia over Boise State. Utah defeated Arizona 30-24. They lost their quarterback, Utah did, Tyler Huntley, to a shoulder injury at the end of the first half. But still, it was all defense for Utah. Forced 5 turnovers, a pick 6. They also, by the way, blocked 2 kicks. And they were able to hold on, and lucky, by the way, to hold on to Arizona. So they got to get Huntley back, though, because Huntley is a little bit better of a quarterback, even though the senior would take over for Utah. I don't think that would be a huge loss. But there's still some talent issues that all over all on both sides of the ball that have been missing from last year's team. It's a good team. It's always a good team. They're a well-coached team. But Utah is not going to be able to compete with the big boys in the Pac-12. Okay, now let us move on and go to the games coming up. First of all, the Alabama-Vanderbilt game is also getting underway right now. And yes, this is a game that we are putting into our money line long shot plays. And the reason I want to preface this by making everybody understand when we do these money line plays, and the reason why I will come on and talk about these games is because not all of them are like, oh yeah, I think that team is beating that team. It's a strategy situation. I get 8-1 on Vandy. That means if I lose this one, based on our formula where we throw in 100 for every money line, straight up money line play, as opposed to 100 on every straight line play, I get an 8-1 shot here. If I lose, okay, I lose 100. If I somehow can get the win, I've just increased my earnings 8 times. And I do believe that Vandy is close to a signature defining win for Derek Mason. I said it last year at the end of the season. I was very impressed with the way that Mason had started to build this program coming over from Stanford, the academic situation there at Vanderbilt. He understands what it takes to build that type of winner. They're starting to do that now with Kyle Shermer, who's having a fantastic year. 8 touchdowns, no picks, 71% completion percentage. He's got Ralph Webb, one of the best backs in the entire conference. Charles Wright, who, by the way, has 6 sacks. Of course, they lost Cunningham, which is a big loss, but Wright is number 2 in the country in sacks with 6. The defense has only given up 13 points in 3 games. We know Alabama's offense hasn't exactly been lighting it up, and this is going to be their toughest competition. I don't also expect Alabama to get up for this game. And you know what? I'm kind of glad it's not a night game. Let Alabama, because you get to a night game and it becomes more of a bigger game for the favorite. So here's a Vandy team that beat Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee last year. They lost to Auburn by 7 on the road last year as a 25-point dog. I just think that if they're going to get a signature win, then here's a shot. I really do. Now, am I sitting here going, oh, upset? Not necessarily. Okay. It's just, I think that if they can play a good game, don't give freebies away, don't give up the easy turnover scores, that kind of thing, then I think Vandy can hang in the game. Maybe they're down 7 going into the fourth quarter. And at that point, anything can happen, as we saw last year with that Penn State-Ohio State game. That's what you want to do. When you're the big dog, you're looking for that big signature win. Sometimes you just got to hang around against the big boys in your conference and hope that you get a block kick or something. Luckily, it lands on your side for once, and then maybe a little bit of pressure on the opposition. So again, I understand what's going on here. I even have Alabama in my Final Four. Okay, so if I didn't think that they'd get there, not that losing this game would throw them out of there. We've seen Alabama lose games like this before and then go on and make the Final Four anyway. All right, so anyway, that's why I just wanted to explain why, if you do see that and again, that'll be on the Prime Sports Network website, exactly why. All right, Oklahoma State 3:30 against TCU. This is a game. Look, we've been riding Oklahoma State all year. We have them in our Final Four. Up until this week, we've made a change. We're putting Clemson into the Final Four now, and the reason we're doing that is because of the fact that we like Clemson's schedule the rest of the way, as opposed to the fact that Oklahoma State must play Oklahoma, and that's a flip of the coin. And that means if whoever wins that game loses another game, then chances are they're not going to get to the Final Four. That's entirely possible. So I decided, at this point, I'm putting Clemson in. Why not? They were my pick, my futures pick last year. They were my big winner last year. I have a lot of confidence in that program and Dabo Swinney in that defense. Had them last week against Louisville. So why not put Clemson in there, which I just did. But Oklahoma State, still love Oklahoma State. Rudolph, Justice Hill, James Washington. Probably the second best trio in college football, maybe even the best next to USC with Jones and Burnett and, of course, Darnold. But anyway, Oklahoma State in this one, I also like the fact I'm not a big Hill fan, the quarterback for TCU. I know he's playing a little bit better this year, but still, it's only 13 points, and that's, to me, only in a conference that is pretty explosive. Kyle Hicks may not play for TCU. He's a huge player for them. 1,000-yard rusher, top receiver last year for them. They do have Darius Anderson running the ball, and he's a good player, but he's not a receiver out of the backfield. So it's one less weapon, it looks like, for TCU. You can't do that going to Oklahoma State. No, I don't see Oklahoma State the way that they played this year, losing this one, and I don't think 13 is too much for me to give up. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Cowboys in that one. Wake Forest. I really like what's going on with Wake Forest. Dave Clawson's doing a good job. They're a 6-point favorite at App State. John Wolford's off to a good start. Running, passing. They have young players, a couple of redshirt freshmen. Akeem Byrd is averaging 6'8" on the ground. And Greg Dortch, who's their number one receiver in catches, yards, and touchdowns. So Clawson's building something there at Wake. Wake Forest is playing, and they're definitely the class here in this situation. So I'm taking the Deacons -6 at App State. I'm also going to go ahead and take South Carolina against Louisiana Tech. That's a 9-point game there as far as some of the other early ones. Now, Cal USC, freshman Chase McGrath was so clutch for USC and getting that win. They have to be coming down a little bit from that emotional win against Texas. Now they go on the road for the first time. Darnold is off to a slow start, 7 touchdowns, 6 picks. For Cal, love what I see out of head coach Justin Wilcox, first-time head coach. Because you know why? He's got the defense playing better. That's what they had to do at Cal. Start playing defense again. Wilcox was probably the best defensive coach assistant in all of college football last year with Wisconsin. That's why he gets this job. That's why it was. And to tell you the truth, I think Dykes would still be here if it wasn't for the fact that Wilcox was available. And they go, you know what? We can't allow Wilcox to go anywhere else. He coached under Tedford and was a linebacker coach here. Out goes Dykes. In comes Wilcox. And by the way, they do have one player to lean on. Devontae Downs, a linebacker, is off to a good start. This is not a situation I'm going to go ahead and take the dog. I mean, the upset to win the game, but I will take Cal and the 17 in this spot. And I think they'll be able to maybe hang around, and especially if USC doesn't get off to a slow start. They're a little punch drunk from last week. Okay, another upset that we're going to go with, straight up Rutgers over Nebraska. And Rutgers is a little bit more than a 3-1 money line at Nebraska. Nebraska's in trouble right now. Trey Bryant, their best offensive player, missed the game last week, the running back. And that's the reason I took Northern Illinois to cover in that one. They won that game outright. Tanner Lee's off to a slow start. 5 touchdowns, 7 picks. Like the fact that Rutgers has a stable of running backs. They even threw in their next franchise program-saving franchise quarterback, Jonathan Lewis, who had 4 touchdowns on the ground. I think this is a perfect spot for Rutgers to steal a win, and I don't care that Nebraska lost last week. I just don't think they're the program they used to be, so I'm going to go ahead and ride Rutgers as a 330 money line play to win the game outright. I'm not going to take Toledo to win the game outright against Miami, but I will take the 14 points. This will probably be a fun game to watch. The Rockets are 9-2 ATS last 11 on the road. You have senior quarterback Woodside. You have running backs Tompkins, Swanson, and Seymour replacing Kareem Hunt, and I think you know who he is by now. They've combined for 646 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. You got Cody Thompson, who's a true number 1 receiver, 391 yards receiving already and 4 touchdowns. And Deontay Johnson's averaging 24 yards a catch and 3 touchdowns and just 12 receptions. So it's a big play offense. Miami, it's only their second game. Keep in mind, they haven't played since September the 2nd because of the storm. Rozier's only in his second start, and his first start was against Bethune-Cookman 3 weeks ago. Yes, Mark Walton's a very good running back and probably has a big day, and we just don't know about Rozier. We have no idea what to expect. Thing is, we know what to expect from Toledo. This is a top MAC program. I think Western Michigan proved that this is when you have the top programs in the MAC. Nowadays, you can compete against these types of teams, so I'll take Toledo plus 14. I'm going to go ahead and also take North Carolina as a short 1-point dog against Duke. Look, I said before, I like Daniel Jones. I think he's going to be a very good player there for what they're doing at Duke. But he was has been a little bit inconsistent so far this year. He's a young kid. Look, they're right now, that offense of Duke has been very. They've been able to run the ball and throw the ball. They're passing for 770 yards through the air, 722 yards through the ground. So that really makes things difficult for opposing defenses. But Duke has not yet played, in my mind, a team like North Carolina. I know North Carolina's not like the last few years teams. I get that. They have a young skill position set on offense. Redshirt freshman Chaz Surratt, even though I like Surratt, is off to a nice start. But they do have a veteran line, and that's been big because with all the other young players that they have at the skill position spots, to have a veteran line is very important. You also have yourself, of course, a very good head coach in Larry Fedora. I like him as a dog. Austin Prohl, by the way, Ricky Prohl's son, is now their number 1 receiver. So I'm going to go ahead and take North Carolina as a 1-point dog there. Okay, now the rest of the games. Now I'm going to be posting the picks for any of the games later on because we'll have them up and ready to go within a few minutes after the show. So probably no later than 4. So one more game I'll do, and then I'll just talk about the big ones, and then I'll leave all the other ones up on the website. So Purdue. We're not going to take him to win the game outright, but I do believe this game is going to be close. We had him last week. It's a straight up winner over Missouri, and they dominated the Tigers. Jeff Brom is doing a great job there. Blau, the quarterback, is a very efficient guy. He likes to dink and dunk and throw the ball to his running backs and his tight ends. He's got two of them in Herdman and Hopkins. He's got a sophomore running back, Ontario Fuller, who's off to a good start. He's got a redshirt freshman receiver in Jackson Anthrop that's off to a good start, leading the team with 4 touchdowns. They're 3-0 against the spread this year. They're getting 11 in this spot at home. Don't talk all season about how Wilton Spade's been very inconsistent. Now it's a true road game for the Wolverines. I've seen this team struggle, especially the last year or so with Spade on the road in this situation before. I can see that happening again. But I will take Michigan to win the game. And you know what? I would not try to sway you away if you wanted to take Purdue to win the game outright. It's a 3-1 money line play. Okay, now the rest of the games later on, I'm taking Oklahoma against Baylor. Lincoln Riley on offense, first-year head coach. Matt Rule on defense, first-year head coach. It's going to be a long season for Baylor on offense. Their quarterbacks are terrible right now. The defense is playing well, which is not a surprise with Rule. But Oklahoma, yes, it's 27 points, but I don't care. I think they remember what Baylor used to do to teams, and I think they'll try to do the same thing to Baylor in that game tonight. So I'll give the 27. I'm also taking SMU as a 4-point favorite against Arkansas State. Like Chad Morris, what he's doing there. Cortland Sutton is a big-time receiver we'll be talking a lot about on the draft show. He's got 5 touchdowns already. And Arkansas State is just 1-11 in their last 12 versus FBS teams, and that win was a Utah State win a few years ago in overtime. I think this line's a little too small, SMU minus the 4. Let's see, San Diego State. We'll be talking about Rashad Perry in weeks to come. He is a little bit bigger than Pumphrey, who had the big career with the Aztecs. Perry shared the load with Pumphrey last year. He's already the number 1 rusher in the country, 588, 8.2 average and 4 touchdowns. And I like San Diego State and their defense to shut down that Air Force offense in that matchup, 3-point favorite for the Aztecs. Let's move on to some of the other night games. New Mexico State, I'm going to mention them because they've been a darling team for me so far. And I never know who those darling teams are going to be, but right now they have been the Aggies under Doug Martin. If you take a look at their right now, they are 3-0 against the spread this year, against 0-3 against the spread UTEP, and they had a 6-point loss to Arizona State, a 3-point loss to Troy, and a 2-point upset win against New Mexico. And we have taken them the last 2 games, and they've done and covered us and won one of those games, one of those upsets. So even though it's 20, we're taking the Aggies in that one. Not going to take Notre Dame at Michigan State. Irish favorite by 3. Wimbush is only completing 51% of his passes. 314 on the ground, 6 touchdowns on the ground. Josh Adams also 443 on the ground. Lewicki's passing better for Michigan State, but I don't like the fact that he's their leading rusher. This is a game I think you should just stay away from. Washington, Colorado. Washington favorite by 12. I'm not going with the outright upset here, but I will take Washington. Dante Pettis, you should know by now, punt return touchdown in all 3 games. Might as well put him in the Heisman conversation at this point. 209 through the air, 3 touchdowns. For Colorado, they've only given up 27 points in 3 games. So the defense, who really lit it up last year, doing the same this year without some key players. Montez has taken over for Leofau. Lindsey, the Pac-12 first-team rusher, still there, and he's their best player. They also have 3 excellent receivers. It's a home game. It's a revenge game. I'm not taking the outright upset, but I will take the 12. Manny Wilkins is throwing the ball better for Arizona State this season. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. Last year he was 12-9. So that's the good thing for Graham in Arizona State. The bad thing is they can't stop anybody, and Oregon's a 14-point favorite on the road. Herbert, the quarterback, Freeman, who's having a huge year, 460 and 9 touchdowns. I'm going to stay away from that one because it's 14 points, but that's a game that probably should be entertaining later tonight. And then also tonight, UCLA and Stanford. This one, I'm not sure where I'm going to go here yet. Maybe I'll take UCLA. I'm not taking Stanford, though. They're a 7-point favorite. And the reason, the Bruins, plus 240 money line. Number 2 passer, yards per game, Rosen, against number 2 rusher, Love. And it's a Pac-12 matchup. Stanford has beaten up UCLA, though, over the last few years. Also games, but keep in mind, Stockstill and Ricky James may not play for Middle Tennessee State, if you're wondering why that line is so low at 7. We will go back to Mississippi State after picking them last week to outright upset LSU. They're a 4-point dog at Georgia. They're 9-3 against the spread in their last 12 as an away dog. Georgia just 1-4 at home as a favorite under Smart. I like Mullen over Smart. I love the way Mississippi State's playing right now. I like Georgia too. I just like Mississippi State a little bit better. I'll take the 4 in that one, in which should be a very close and good football game. I'm also going to take another outright upset, Ball State over Western Kentucky and 11. Ball State, the Cardinals are plus 340. Mike New, I think he's going to turn this program around. They have right now the leader in sacks in the country, Anthony Wimbush. I know James Gilbert may not play the running back, but Caleb Huntley and Malik Dunner are pretty good number 2 and 3 running backs. They also have redshirt freshman receiver Justin Hall. And Mike White is just not the same quarterback without Jeff Brom. It's just, it's evident. And I've gone against Western Kentucky all season long, and I've been able to win every game. So why not go ahead and take Ball State here, plus the 340. No Anthony Wales. They're a 1,600-yard rusher. Gone. Jeff Brom, gone. Their top 2 receivers last year, Taywan Taylor, who's in Tennessee, gone. And also 3 key all-conference USA linemen, including Forrest Lamp, number 2 draft choice, gone. And this is just not going to be a good year for the Hilltoppers. I'm also taking Kentucky over Florida. That's right. Kentucky, this is the longest series win streak in FBS. Florida has dominated Kentucky, but I'm taking the Wildcats plus the 3 tonight. Still suspended players for Florida, including their number 1 rusher, Scarlett, number 1 receiver, Callaway. Kentucky, meanwhile, has played great football since last year. They've won 8 out of 11. They've beaten teams like Mississippi State. They just beat South Carolina last week on the road. And don't forget the end of the season, 27-point road dog upset over Louisville last year. So Stoops has got this program headed in the right direction. And if they're ever going to break the streak, this is the time to do it. Florida, emotional win last week. There's no way they can get themselves back and ready to go this week because Kentucky's going to be the team playing with emotion this time around. And finally, Penn State and Iowa. I'm staying away from this one because, frankly, I like the way Iowa's playing, and yet Penn State's my national championship pick. I just don't want to go in this situation on the road at night and take Penn State and give the numbers. But Nate Stanley's off to a good start for Iowa. Wadley's off to a good start. Of course, Fant, the tight end we've talked about with Dan Shanka. We've talked about Josie Jewell, the linebacker for the Hawkeyes. But with McSorley, Barkley, who could be the Heisman winner. And by the way, also, keep an eye on Penn State's defense. Another reason I like them this year. I think they're better than last year. Marcus Allen, Curtis Martin's godson, is one of the leaders on that defense. They've surrendered just 14 points in 3 games. So we'll post the picks on the website within the next half hour, 45 minutes, just to let you know all of them. So they're in the books. And we'll talk again soon. Not sure if we're going to do a show tomorrow. That is possible, but I don't guarantee it because we do, we've done enough NFL shows, including the NFL show on Thursdays with Tony Mejia. But this show's sticking around. We're going to let you know what's going on every week. We're also going to talk about what's going on after the action, and that's going to be on our Mondays, our OFN Monday show, which airs, I believe, 6 o'clock. Every Monday, so following Jets Confidential Radio on the Prime Sports Radio Network. But this is the Ourlads Football Radio Network, and we want to thank you very much for joining us once again. We're going to have more OFN shows, as always, all the way through the season. We're going to see you again on Monday. The next OFN show is going to be OFN Monday nights. Again, I'll come on, recap the weekend in the NFL and college football. Jamal Murphy, Ourlads chief fantasy analyst, will join me to wrap up what happened in fantasy football and everything else going on all next week, including Dan Shanka, Tony Mejia, Dan Weinrich, and much more right here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter again, and also don't forget to go to ourlads.com for the best depth charts, NFL and college in the business. Paranoia is in bloom, the transmissions will